So welcome to this Cycling Life Leadership Bites. Today I'm going to be interviewing Australian Matt White, but rather than me introduce him, I'd like for him to do that himself. So over to you, Matt.
Yeah, good morning, Jamie. Hi, my name's Matthew White. I'm the head sports director of Mitchelton-SCOTT Professional Cycling Team. I'm an ex-professional, raced here in Europe for 12 years on the circuit, and father of three, and I live in a town of 20,000, about 70 kilometres south of Valencia in Spain.
Excellent. Well, Matt, I wasn't sure, like, when I was going to interview what I should call you, because as Australians, we always use nicknames and stuff. Alan Davis is Albie, Michael Rogers is Mick. What do you like to be called?
Yeah, look, Australians do love a good old nickname, and look, a lot of people call me Whitey, that's for sure.
All right, so I'll go with Whitey. So, all right, Whitey, we're here to talk about leadership, and you made that transition from being a pro rider into management and leadership. So, I guess there's two important aspects of leadership. One of those is sort of leading yourself. How do you take yourself into these situations? And then there's leading others. So why don't we start with leading yourself? I mean, for you personally, what are the attributes and important characteristics of a leader?
Yeah, for me, I think one thing that I really held on to is never forget where you came from. And my transition, it was an immediate transition from being a rider in December to leading a team in January. And so never forget what it's like and where you've come from.
And when you say where you come from, I mean, as I understand it, I mean, it's not like you came from a family with a deep cycling heritage, or it's not like you. So is it also about remembering not just sort of where you came from as a rider, but at a deeper level?
Yeah, I think both. I think also remembering what it was like to come over here as a young guy, as an amateur or as a young professional trying to break into the scene, and have an apathy for people. So that apathy and that connection that I have with my athletes, I think that really helps the relationship going forward and what I can ask of those guys in the future. Look, it's a very hard sport, cycling, and if you can have a connection with people by showing apathy towards them, it certainly helps.
Okay. Is that also, maybe we'll come when we talk about leading others, but is that also about, I guess, managing your ego as someone who's in a leadership position? Because, in some countries, some cultures, some sports teams probably, there's a lot of hierarchy. So how do you look at that? Humility, and then they overlap with hierarchy.
Yeah, well, how I see our organisation is it's very flat-lined. I think I have a responsibility, but I'm in a team of, in total, 95 to 100 people. And when we're on the road for those individual races, I'm in charge of a group of about 35 people. So I don't see myself as working above those people, but working with them. And I think it's the same with the athletes. I think they've got a responsibility to their role and what they have to do, and so do I. So I think people see me as someone who works on a pretty flat line as far as leadership.
Yeah, and how about handling pressure? Because I guess you have a huge amount of accountability as someone sort of at the leading the organization. How do you handle pressure and stress personally?
Yeah, personally, I love it. I think the job that I'm in, and I did make a transition from being an athlete straight away into this world. So I don't actually feel like I ever actually left. And I do love the thrill of racing and the thrill of having to make high pressure situations. And how I deal with it, I think exercise for me is the number one key. I think I'm not a big sleeper at the best of the time. So when I am at races, I exercise every day, and it's something that I get into a routine, and it starts my day with my planning.
Yeah. And when you're out on your bike, or I know you run because that's often easier for you, particularly when you're out on the road. I mean, what do you think about? I mean, what goes through your mind when you're taking this time out to be on your own?
Yeah, and most of the time I do exercise on my own. And what I like about it is, what I do is I'll picture what I want my day to look like. And we've done a lot of recons, a lot of research into these stages day by day. But so if I can go into all those scenarios in that 30 minute to 1 hour window of exercise, so when I do deal with that situation in the race, it feels like I've been there before. And look, you can't plan for everything, but it certainly helps my thought processes when I have to make decisions. I've already sort of made certain plans in the morning and sort of plan out the best way for us to move forward and the best way for us to attack a certain situation.
Yeah, that's cool, Whitey. If you hear a little bit of noise in the background, I'm recording this at home, so my wife's decided to turn the washing machine on. The kids are chatting.
I can hear mold dust, mate.
That's all right, no worries. You're also a guy who seems like you smile and laugh a lot. I mean, as a leader, as an individual, how important is that to project sort of a positivity to others, and how important it is for you yourself to help your own mood?
Yeah, I think it's a big factor. Is people talk a lot about culture, but I think with the culture, what culture boils down to is the environment that you are happy to work with. And look, professional sport, like a lot of business, it's high pressure, but you can enjoy yourself. And I think if you don't enjoy yourself, the sacrifices that you're making, which there are a lot. These guys are on the road for a lot of the year and spending a lot of time away from family and friends. So I think if you create an environment where you can have a laugh and know when that on and off switch is, when you can switch on for work and when you can switch off to relax and enjoy your workmates' company.
Yeah. And I'm a big fan of Backstage Pass, the little short videos you make, for races and following the team through the season. There seems to be a lot of laughter in the team. You're there to win races. I've watched videos with other teams. I'm not going to mention which teams, but when I watch some of those documentaries with other teams, it looks almost grim. Lots of seriousness and even people being aggressive towards each other or competitive with each other. What's the role of humor for you? There's smiling and positivity, but then there's having a laugh. And
I think if there was videos, and we have got a lot of videos of some of the most high pressure moments in the team, there was always a laugh around. And I think it's that ability for the team to know when there's an on and an off switch. But I think it started off for us as a way to promote the team, because anyone can watch sport on television, but what people really want to see is what's happening behind the scenes. And what you've seen on our videos over the years is it's who we are. What you see is who we are, and we're not putting on any act for anybody. And I think it's a great working environment, but I think those videos wouldn't work on a lot of teams. And it's an environment which has enabled us to attract a lot of young guys, because young guys see that we have a hierarchy, sure, but also if you're good, you're capable of winning. That 10, 15-year professionals will be working for first-year professionals if they're the man for the job for the day.
Yeah, cool. I mean, has that been something? Maybe we'll come to that when we talk about others in terms of people fitting into that culture, because it does seem quite unique. I mean, how about with you? I mean, it's very interesting what you're saying now, because I've met you personally. I've seen you on Backstage Pass. We're chatting now. It doesn't seem to me like there's two Matt Whites. It seems to me like Whitey is pretty much, you get what you see. So how important do you think that is for leadership, that you should be authentic? Because sometimes, I've seen you getting angry. I've seen you being upset. What's that? What does authenticity or vulnerability mean for you as a person?
Yeah, I think people, I don't hide who I am. I think if you want to make a real connection with people, you've got to be able to listen to them, and they've got to be able to see you as being human as well. And I think, I'm in a position where I have to ask a lot of guys physically and mentally. And if they see my natural reaction, whether that's being stressed or being happy or being sad or really feeling the moment, I think it all boils down to having a connection with your workmates and your athletes. And the best way to do that is just being honest and transparent with people.
Yeah. Okay, great. So, I mean, I think that's a terrific summary. I mean, you mentioned in terms of leading yourself, the importance of this positive energy, trying to stay happy in yourself, to use humor, but also what you mentioned very importantly about not just, looking after your brain as a leader in terms of thinking, but also your body, that you do still try to make time for exercise and getting out there. And also really the importance of being true to yourself, not trying to pretend to be what you're not. I mean, maybe we could talk now about this idea of leading others, because, one of the things you've explained to me in previous conversations we've had is about this importance of really listening to other people. Can you talk to us a bit about that, Whitey?
Yeah, I think it's a real key attribute of being a great leader. And I think where I sort of honed my skills of listening to people was when I first turned professional. I raced in Italy. I went to Italy. I'd never been to Italy as a country before. I didn't understand the country culturally. And here I was in a team of 20 athletes. Not one person spoke English, no rider, no staff. And that forced me, because my language skills early on were pretty poor, to listen to people. And I think if you can listen to people and read people, I think it's a crucial attribute of being a great leader. And that's where it all started for me, 22, 23 years ago, when I was thrown in the deep end in foreign teams. And also I work a lot with people who English is not their first language. So being able to listen, people might not always be able to communicate what they want correctly, but if you can read people and get people, you'll understand and they'll understand you.
I can see you're getting into your groove now, Whitey, because your pace of speaking has started to get faster and faster, which is often something which often you do because you get excited. You obviously love what you do. I mean, on that one of listening, though, I mean, isn't it sometimes difficult because we all have opinions. You work with nutritionists and sports scientists, aerodynamics experts. How do you develop that skill to try to, I don't know how to put it, but really to listen more deeply? Because what we tend to often do is listen from our perspective, from our experience. Does that link to the humility stuff you were talking about? So what's the difference? Because there is listening and then there's really listening. How do you really listen?
Yeah, look, and it's something that at times I've struggled with as well, because I do get so excited and so into what we're doing that I sort of only listening for an outcome that I want.
Yeah, right.
And it's something you've got to keep working on and keep listening and being honest with people. And I suppose if people realize that what they're saying is valued, you as a leader, you have got to cherry pick people's opinions, and you can't listen to everyone. You can't. You've got to listen to everyone, but you can't take on board what everyone's saying. So you've got to be able to listen and cherry pick the crucial messages from each person that you're listening to. And I think the best way to do that is actually give them time and let them finish, and make them feel valued.
Yeah. I mean, to what extent is that also important for persuading people? Because I guess, sometimes it's very interesting because I've heard you in backstage past episodes before, when you're in the car, you're talking to these really, really experienced riders and you give them some opinion, you give them some view. But then I've heard you even say, guys, it's up to you. You make the decision. This is what I think. I mean, how important is that as a leader, actually? Because, there's some, sports directors who would just say, do this. I don't think I've ever heard you say or demand that riders have to do something. You use different language. So how do you play off that sort of, I don't know, being directive and giving people the autonomy to make decisions, but obviously you sometimes want them to make the decision that you want. So how do you be persuasive like that?
Yeah, I think one, it boils down to being able to read a mood, or read a situation, how stressful the situation is, what the original plan was, and knowing which people you've got around you. Obviously we've got in our team alone, we've got 20-year-olds and we've got 40-year-olds. So we've got guys with a big variety of experience, life experience, and also racing experience. So, and also understanding how those guys handle pressure in different situations. Some guys you can rely on Monday to Friday, 9 to 9, and other guys sometimes in stressful situations, maybe not that you don't value their opinion or their decision, but you've got to take it with a grain of salt of how they are affected with pressure. And so it boils back down to reading a mood and reading a group that you're working with.
Yeah, great. And that group, because as a sports director, as a leader, you have to choose people. So how do you go about building the team around you? And obviously some people come and go. What's important for you as a leader in terms of those people you want to be working with you? To what extent have you worked with people over many years?
Yeah, I think with staff, in my 12th year over this side of the fence, and I've had people with me that whole journey, that whole 12 years. And I think it's important that you identify good people and take them on that journey with you. And a good example of that is that my first year as a sports director in 2008, when I took a team to the Giro, I was the only person in that organisation who'd actually been to the Tour of Italy, and I was a rider. That was a rider 12 months before, and it was a really stressful time. It was successful. We won the first stage, the team's time trial, took the Maglia Rosa, but it was stressful because it was a very young organisation, and there's a lot of those people who could handle that initial pressure in that first year. I kept a lot of those people with me through that team and then onto the teams I've been in with since. And I think when you identify talented people who can perform very well under pressure, I think you've got to, great leaders take those people with you, because then you can trust. I'm not a big micromanager, and there's lots of people doing lots of different roles around me at the same time, and having people that you can trust will get the job done. I think it's great to have, and you can then you can focus on what's best for you and what you do best, and not have to worry about what other people are doing.
Yeah. Yeah, understood. And how about giving feedback, Whitey? Because, you know, if you have been working with someone for 10 years, I guess it's more than just a colleague. I mean, you also have friendships with people, and sometimes that's a challenge, isn't it, as a leader? I mean, balancing this sort of fine line between leadership and friendship, collegiality. So how do you find that as a leader, giving people feedback who sometimes are very close to you personally?
Yeah, again, it's not easy. It's not easy. I think the closer you are to people, sometimes the harder it is to give honest feedback. But I think, again, it boils down to what relationship you have with that individual. That, again, knowing, you know, some people, you know, really close friends can be the worst or the best people to give constructive criticism to, because if you know them well, maybe you know that they can cop it on the chin and they want that. And other people, you know, you've really got to tippy toe around and give it to them in a different way or a different message. So it's about knowing your people, knowing your friends, and again, the situation. Some people at certain times, if you know them, what's happening in their personal life, yeah, it certainly helps. It certainly helps if they're in a good place, in a bad place, what's happening in the race, what time of year it is, as far as, you know, how stressful a period of the year it is. So again, it's just knowing your people.
Yeah. That's an important point you made. I mean, you just mentioned about knowing people's personal, you know, situations and setups as well. I mean, as a leader, to what extent is that important? Not just knowing the professional, the expert across the table, but understanding what's happening more broadly in a person's life.
Yeah, it's very important. I'm not a big into asking and delving into people. You know, I think if the people know that you're there to listen to them, that if people have got problems, that they can feel they can come and talk to you. I'm not someone who pries or asks questions about how things are going in their personal life. Because I think I've got a relationship with most people that if they've got a problem, they can come to me. And I think that's all that people need to know. I think people don't like being questioned of what's happening in their personal life. But if you've got an idea if things are good or things are a little bit stressful, and people know that they can always come to their leaders, I think that's a great place to start.
Okay, great. And that's something, again, I mean, if we look at the something that I research, you know, which is the positivity and the humor, it also shows that, you know, if you generally are, you know, more positive as a person, you're fun, you know, you like to laugh with people, that also reduces the distance, you know, between you and people, makes you sometimes more accessible. And that's what I, you know, often seen with you on Backstage Pass. You just seem a very, you know, down to earth, accessible person. But how do you, Whitey, like, how do you know when to motivate somebody and when to leave them alone? Because in some of these really high intense race situations, or maybe, you know, situations where you have real issues and problems and challenges, I mean, how do you know when to push and when to step back?
Yeah, look, I don't think there's a textbook way to know that. I think spending a lot of time with your people, and I suppose an example of that from last year from the Tour de France, we'd gone through that first part of the Tour de France looking after our leader, Adam Yates. Things didn't go well, but we had 1-2 stages. And I remember sitting there in the team meeting, and we break up our meetings into different lots, and we have other sports directors giving talking about the profiles and the weather conditions. And I come in at the last minute and talk about the tactics and how we're going to play out the stage. And I could just, that morning, I could just feel, people were content. People were sort of happy where we were. We were 2 weeks into the tour. We'd won 2 stages. We'd already ticked a couple of boxes. And the talk I gave to the guys after we talked about our tactics was it was pretty intense. But I just felt the team needed it, and it wasn't rehearsed. It was off the cuff. But I just see the guys they needed a little bit of a wake up. That, you know, the Tour de France is never easy, and we're going into a very hard last week. And what gave the guys a little bit of a reminder how hard they had worked to actually get here. And yeah, it was great that we had 1-2 stages, but we weren't going to stop. And just to push them just that little bit. And yeah, fortunately that day we had to come up with our third win of the tour, and we won another 2 stages after that. But it's just knowing the environment and knowing the people, and when to push and when to back off sometimes.
But you've also got something unique which many leaders don't have, because in a race situation you've literally got an earpiece in a rider's ear. So as a leader, unlike somebody in, you know, a company or a business, it's not like, you know, the average consulting partner has an earpiece in every one of his consultant's ears or her consultant's ears and can just give this feedback. You can. So how do you use that? Because you can literally talk to a rider who's a kilometre from the finish line.
Yeah, and look, that's something that at times I have struggled with in the past, that you've got to be able to think what's going on in their mind at the moment. They're talking to someone who's at threshold in a bunch of 200 riders taking risks. You've got to remember where they are and remember when to turn on and turn off. So at times I do get excited, and I have got maybe a little bit too excited on the radio. So you've got to back off. And I think the higher the pressure, the moment in the race, the less information that you've actually got to give them. And I think it might sound strange, but I think the amount of technology we've got these days with certain apps and certain information that I can give the guys, if I give them too much information, especially under stress, they'll end of the day, they'll start switching off. Yeah. So I think less information, key information at a certain tone, I think that's something that I've been working on over the last few years, and hopefully I've got a lot better than my early days as directing.
That's fantastic, Matt. Okay, thanks a lot. So, I mean, you've covered a lot of ground in this 20 minutes we've had together, but for me, I guess the important things you talk about really was around that leading yourself. Something you've constantly come back to during this discussion is humility, to be humble, to be empathetic, really to tune into other people, which was moving into that leading others piece. And again, I guess we've been structuring this talk about how much you've talked about really listening to other people, having your opinions, having your knowledge and expertise, but really tuning into others. So Matt, that's fantastic for us. I mean, of course, before we leave, you do have to give us one of those big whitey smiles. You've been talking about positivity, but you do get serious sometimes. You've got a few of those, those worry wrinkles, Whitey, so.
I just think I'm always, when I'm on, that's for sure. And I'm always thinking about things and think about how to do things better. And actually, it's been a pretty difficult time. I've been, besides being locked down for 6 weeks in home, in my house, with 3 very active kids, this is the longest time I've spent at home for maybe ever. And I'm a real creature of habit, and I'm on the road for 9-10 months a year, and looking forward for this crisis to sort of pat it down a bit, and we'll get back into what I love doing, and that's being at races and working with my team.
Excellent. Matt White, thanks for this 20 minutes of leadership insights on this Cycling Life Bites.